My name is Anika. I am 28 years old. For many years, I worked at Microsoft. When I first joined, I was very proud. It was one of the biggest companies in the world, and I believed my future would be bright there. At the beginning, everything looked good. The office was modern, the teams were big, and I had many talented colleagues. I worked hard every day. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to grow. But slowly, I began to feel something was wrong. I wanted to take more responsibility. I had ideas about projects. I wanted to try new things, but my managers did not listen. They said, "Not now, maybe later." Every time I gave a suggestion, they delayed it. Every time I asked for growth, they ignored me. At first, I stayed quiet. I thought maybe I must wait. Maybe one day they would trust me more. But months passed, then years passed, and nothing changed. I saw other people moving up. I saw some colleagues get new positions, but I stayed in the same place. It hurt me. I worked so many hours. I gave all my energy, but I was not growing. One day, I sat with my manager. I asked again about promotion. I explained that I wanted more challenges. I wanted to lead a team. But he looked at me and said, "Anika, you are good at your work, but maybe leadership is not for you yet. Maybe you need more time." I felt small in that moment. I felt he did not believe in me. I felt he did not even see my efforts. I smiled outside, but inside I was broken. I went home that day with heavy steps. I looked at myself in the mirror and I asked, "How long will you wait? How long will you let others stop you?" From that day, I decided to change. I decided to leave. It was not easy. Leaving a big company like Microsoft is never easy. Many people said, "Stay. You are safe here. Why risk everything?" But I knew I had to choose myself. I knew I had to find a place where I could grow. I wanted to be somewhere that valued my ideas. So I left Microsoft. At first I felt free, but then fear came. I was jobless. I had to think about my future. I asked myself, where do I really want to work? And one name came to my heart, Google. I always admired Google. I admired the way they solved problems. I admired how they used creativity. I admired how they listened to people. I read many articles about their workplace. People said Google respected new ideas. People said Google gave space for growth. I wanted that. I wanted to be part of it. So I began to prepare. Every morning, I woke up early. I read about the company. I studied their projects. I practiced questions and answers. I worked on my resume. I wrote down every skill I had. I wrote about my experience at Microsoft. I wanted to show that even though I left, I learned a lot there. At night, I stood in front of the mirror. I practiced speaking. I said, "Why do you want to work at Google?" Then I answered as if I was in the interview. because I believe in growth, because I believe in innovation, because I want to give my best to a company that gives space for ideas. Sometimes I felt nervous. What if they reject me? What if I am not good enough? But then I remembered why I left Microsoft. I left because I believed I deserved more. And now I had to fight for it. The day came when I got an email. It was from Google. They said, "We reviewed your application. We would like to invite you for an interview." My hands shook when I read it. Tears came to my eyes. It was real. I got a chance. I told my parents, and they were so proud. They said, "Anika, you worked hard for this. Now go and show them who you are." The night before the interview, I could not sleep. I lay in bed with my eyes open. I thought about every question they might ask. I thought about how I would sit, how I would smile, how I would answer. I whispered to myself, "This is your moment. Do not be afraid. You are ready." The morning came. I wore my best clothes, a simple white shirt, a black jacket, and small earrings. I wanted to look professional but also confident. I took a taxi to the Google office. The building was tall and modern. When I entered, my heart skipped a beat. The atmosphere was different. It was bright. It was open. People were smiling but also working hard. I felt a strong energy there. I thought, this is the place. This is where I want to be. At the reception, they gave me a visitor card. They told me to wait for the panel. As I sat there, I looked around at the posters on the wall. They showed projects about AI, about health, about education. It inspired me. After a few minutes, a woman came and said, "Anika, please follow me." My heart beat faster. This was it. She led me to a large room. There was a panel of people. 3 women, 2 men. They smiled politely. They looked serious but kind. One of them said, "Welcome, Anika. We are glad you are here." I sat down. I held my hands tightly in my lap. I told myself, breathe, just breathe. And then the interview began. Before I continue my story, please subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. The panel looked at me with calm eyes. Their faces were serious, but also kind. I could feel the air in the room. It was not heavy, but it was powerful. These people were leaders. They were experienced. I told myself to stay strong. One of the women on the panel smiled first. She said, "Anika, please tell us about yourself." I took a deep breath. My voice was soft at first, but it grew stronger as I spoke. "My name is Anika. I worked for Microsoft for several years. I was part of big projects. Worked on software, on teams, and on growth plans. But after some time, I wanted more. I wanted to take responsibility, but I did not get that chance. So I decided to step out and find a place where my ideas could grow. As I finished, I felt my heart beating fast. I looked at their faces. They were listening carefully. They were not writing much, but they were watching me closely. The second panel member, a man in a gray suit, leaned forward. "Why Google?" he asked. I looked at him. This was the question I had practiced so many times. "Because I believe in innovation," I said. "Because Google is not only about technology, it is about changing lives. I read about projects in health, in education, in environment. Google does not just build products, it builds the future. And I want to be part of that future." I felt my hands shaking a little under the table, but I kept smiling. The panel nodded slowly. The third person, another woman, spoke next. Her voice was firm. "At Microsoft, what was your biggest challenge?" My mind went back to those difficult days. I remembered meetings where my ideas were ignored. I remembered nights when I worked late but felt unseen. My biggest challenge was not the work itself, I said softly. It was the feeling that my voice was not heard. I gave suggestions. I worked hard, but the decisions were not open for discussion. I felt limited. I wanted to grow, but there was a wall, and that wall did not move. That is why I decided to leave, because I believe growth is as important as stability. The room was quiet for a moment. I thought maybe I said too much. But then one of the panel members, an older man with silver hair, spoke gently. "It takes courage to leave a big company. Many people stay even when they are not happy. You chose to walk away. That says something about you." His words gave me strength. For the first time in the room, I felt lighter. The questions continued. They asked about teamwork. They asked how I solved conflicts. They asked what kind of leader I wanted to be. Each time I tried to answer honestly. I said, "I believe a leader must listen." I said, "When there is conflict, I look for solutions that are fair." I said, "Leadership is not about power, it is about responsibility." Sometimes my voice shook. Sometimes I paused to think. But I never stopped. I wanted them to see me as I was, a woman ready to work, ready to grow, and ready to lead. At one point, they gave me a problem to solve. "Imagine a project is behind schedule," one of them said. "Your team is stressed. The client is unhappy. What will you do?" I closed my eyes for a second. I pictured the scene. Then I spoke slowly. "First, I will calm the team. Stress only makes things worse. Then, I will check the reasons for delay. If it is because of resources, I will ask for help. If it is because of mistakes, I will take responsibility. And then, I will sit with the client. I will explain the plan clearly. I will not hide the truth. I will promise a solution and I will keep it." When I finished, I looked at their faces. The woman in the center wrote something down. Another smiled slightly. I felt a small wave of relief. The interview went on for more than an hour. but I did not feel the time. I was nervous, but I was also excited. Every question made me think. Every question made me speak with my heart. I also noticed something about the panel. They were not just testing me. They were also showing me the culture of Google. They listened. They gave me time. They respected my words. I felt something I never felt at Microsoft. My voice mattered here. Near the end, one of them asked, "Annika, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" I smiled. I had thought about this many times. I see myself leading a strong team. I see myself making decisions that matter. I see myself not just working on projects, but changing something important in the world, even if it is small. And I see myself here, at Google, still learning, still growing. The room was silent again, but this silence was different. It was not heavy. It was warm. Finally, the woman in the center closed her folder. She said, "Thank you, Annika. We will contact you soon with our decision." Her words were polite, simple, and professional, but my heart sank a little. Soon. That meant waiting. I stood up. I smiled. I said, "Thank you for this opportunity." As I left the room, my legs felt weak. I walked down the bright hallway. The receptionist smiled at me. I gave her a small smile back. But inside, my emotions were a storm. Outside the Google office, the air was fresh. The sun was shining. People were walking, cars were moving. But for me, the world felt quiet. I stood there for a moment. I looked up at the building. It looked strong, tall, and full of life. I whispered to myself, "I hope this becomes my place." I took a taxi back home. The whole ride, I replayed the interview in my head. Did I answer well? Did I speak too much about Microsoft? Did they like me? Or did I fail? My thoughts went round and round. When I reached home, my mother opened the door. She saw my face. "How was it?" she asked softly. I hugged her. "It was good," I said. "It was very professional. They asked many questions. I tried my best." She held my hand. "That is enough, Annika. You gave your best. Now the rest is not in your hands." That night, I sat on my bed. My laptop was open, but I could not work. My phone was beside me. Every time it rang, my heart jumped. But it was never Google. It was only friends asking, "How did it go?" I smiled at their messages, but inside I was waiting for that one email, waiting for that one call, waiting for the answer that could change my life. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. My heart was already restless. The interview was over, but the wait had just begun. I knew it could take days, maybe even weeks, for Google to send me the final result. Still, my eyes kept going to my phone every few minutes. I checked my email again and again, as if refreshing the screen could bring me the answer faster. I tried to distract myself. I made tea. I watered the plants on the balcony. I opened a book, but my eyes would not stay on the pages. My mind was somewhere else. Every sound of a message made me jump. Sometimes it was only a shopping offer. Sometimes it was a news alert. Not Google. Not yet. I walked around the house with a heavy heart. My mother came into the room. She saw me pacing from the table to the window. "Anika," she said softly, "you will make yourself sick. Sit down. Breathe. The letter will come when it is time." I sat down beside her. She gave me a cup of tea. The warmth of the cup calmed me a little, but inside, the storm did not stop. I kept asking myself, did I answer well? Did I speak too much about leaving Microsoft? Did they think I was strong, or did they think I was impatient? The hours moved slowly that day. Morning turned to afternoon, afternoon to evening. I ate lunch without tasting it. I stared at my laptop screen without seeing anything. I tried to watch a movie, but after 5 minutes, I paused it. I could not focus. All I could do was wait. At night, I lay in bed with my phone in my hand. The screen light touched my face in the dark room. I opened my email again. Nothing new. I sighed and put the phone down, but then I picked it up again after a few minutes. My heart was not ready to rest. The next day was the same, and the day after that. The waiting was not easy. It was like standing at a train station, not knowing when the train would come, but being afraid to move even for 1 second in case you missed it. Sometimes I tried to imagine the 2 possible futures. One future where the letter said yes. I saw myself walking into the Google office as an employee, not as a visitor. I saw myself leading a team, giving ideas, making decisions. I saw myself smiling with pride. And then the other future came to my mind. The letter said no. I saw myself sitting in this same room with tears in my eyes. I saw myself questioning everything. Maybe I was not good enough. Maybe leaving Microsoft was a mistake. Both futures lived in my head at the same time. And that was the hardest part. The waiting was like a test of patience, of hope, of faith in myself. One evening, my father came into my room. He sat on the chair near my desk. He looked at me for a long moment and then said, "Do you know something, Anika? Life is not always about one letter. If Google says yes, good. If they say no, still good. Because you already proved something important. You proved that you had the courage to leave a place where you were not happy. You proved you are ready to fight for yourself." His words touched my heart. I held them close that night as I tried to sleep. Still, my hands searched for the phone again and again. Days passed. Every morning I woke up with hope. Every night I went to bed with the same question. Will tomorrow bring the letter? And then, one afternoon, As the rain tapped gently on the windows, I heard the sound of a new message. My heart jumped so hard I almost dropped the phone. I opened my inbox. There it was. A message from Google. For a moment, I did not breathe. My hand shook as I touched the screen. My eyes stared at the subject line. Your interview result. The world became quiet. Even the rain outside felt silent. I held the phone close to me, but I did not open it. I closed my eyes. I told myself, this is the answer you waited for. This is the answer that could change your life. But still, I did not open it. Not yet. I wanted to hold on to this moment for a little longer, the moment before knowing, when both futures were still possible. Yes or no. Hope or heartbreak. Growth or waiting again. I placed the phone on the table and walked to the window. The rain was falling softly. People were running with umbrellas. The street looked gray, but in my heart there was color. Because even in this silence, I felt alive. I thought about my journey, about the first day I joined Microsoft, full of hope, about the long nights of hard work, the meetings where I was quiet, the moments when I wanted to speak but held back. I thought about the courage it took to say goodbye to a safe job, about the risk I took to stand up for myself, about the day I walked into the tall Google office, my heart racing but my spirit strong, and I realized something important. The answer in the letter was not the only thing that mattered. What mattered was the path I chose. What mattered was that I did not let fear control me. I turned back to the table. The phone screen was still lit, waiting for me. My heart still raced. The letter was there, and one day I would open it. But in that moment, I smiled, because I understood. Microsoft is a good company. It gave me skills, it gave me experience, and I respect it for that. But my disagreements there, about career progress, about decisions, about growth, led me to leave. And leaving brought me here, to this moment, to this letter. I whispered to myself, no matter what is inside, this was worth it. I picked up the phone again. The message was still unopened. My fingers touched the screen gently. My eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of strength. And then, with a deep breath, I opened the letter. What do you think was inside the letter? Would Google say yes or no? Sometimes in life, the answer is not the point. It is the courage to ask the question. If you enjoyed my journey, please share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that touch your heart, challenge your mind, and help you learn English in a simple, emotional way. Your support means everything to me. The clock ticked loudly in the small room. The table was set. The food was hot. The candles burned low. I sat and waited for him. My hands were on my lap. My eyes stayed on the door. At last I heard the key turn. The door opened. Daniel walked in. His shoulders were bent. His face was tired. He did not smile. He did not look at me. He put his bag down and took off his shoes slowly. I stood and said, "I cooked for you." He looked at the table. He said in a low voice, "I ate already." Then he walked past me and sat on the couch. He picked up his phone. His face lit with the screen, not with me. The food stayed untouched on the table. I sat again. My chest felt heavy. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. The silence filled the room. It was stronger than fire. I remembered a different time, a time when he would smile at the door, a time when he hugged me before even putting down his bag, a time when his eyes looked for mine first. That time felt far away now. I rose from the table and put the plates away. The food went cold in the sink. Daniel stayed on the couch. He scrolled on his phone. He did not ask about my day. He did not see my face. At night we went to bed. The lights turned off. The room was dark. I lay on one side. He lay on the other. His back was to me. His breaths were slow. My eyes were open. I listened to the silence. It was louder than any voice. I turned to face the wall. The sheet between us felt like a wall too. I whispered his name in my head, but not with my lips. My heart beat fast, but no words came out. The next day I cleaned the house. I washed clothes. I made lunch. When he came home, he ate quickly. He said little. Only, "The food is fine." Then he went to his phone again. I wanted to ask, "Do you love me still?" But fear held me back. I feared he would not answer. I feared his answer would be no. So I stayed quiet. On Sunday, I tried again. I said, "Daniel, let us go for a walk." The sun was warm. The street was calm. He said yes. We walked side by side. Our steps were slow. The trees moved in the wind, but no words passed between us. I asked about his work. He said, "Busy." I asked if he slept well. He said, "Fine." Then he was silent. His eyes looked ahead. I looked at the ground. We were close in body, but far in heart. That night I sat with a book in my hands. I did not read. I only watched him. He sat with the television on. The light from the screen touched his face. His eyes did not turn to me. His lips did not move. I wanted to go and sit by him. I wanted to touch his hand, but fear stopped me. I thought, what if he pulls away? What if he does not care? So I stayed in my chair. At work, my friends spoke about their families. Some laughed about small fights. Some shared about love and care. I only smiled. I said, "We are fine." But inside, I was breaking. That night I tried to speak again. At dinner I asked, "Do you feel we are far now?" His fork stopped for a second. He looked at me. I saw his eyes, but only for a short moment. He said, "I am tired, Clara." Then he ate again. I waited for more words. None came. I pushed my food around the plate. My throat felt dry. My chest felt tight. I wanted to ask again, but I stayed quiet. After that night, I never asked again. Days passed, then weeks. The silence did not leave. It grew stronger. It walked with us in the house. It sat with us at the table. It lay with us in bed. It followed me like a shadow. I began to feel invisible. If I smiled, he did not see. If I wore a new dress, he did not look. If I cooked something special, he ate without a word. It was like I had faded in front of his eyes. At times I thought, maybe this is normal. Maybe all couples grow quiet after years. But another voice in me said, no, this is not normal. Love should have words. Love should have warmth. I tried small things. I made his favorite soup. I bought a shirt for him. I waited to see his face light up, but his face stayed the same. His lips gave no praise. His eyes gave no spark. I started to lose myself. I spoke less at work. I laughed less with friends. The silence at home became the silence inside me. I felt like a ghost walking through my own days. Sometimes late at night I thought of leaving. But where would I go? What would I say? He had not hurt me with hands. He had not betrayed me with lies. He had only left me with silence. And that silence was killing me slowly. One night I sat at the edge of the bed. He was asleep. His breath was calm. I looked at his face. I remembered the man who once held me close. I remembered the voice that once whispered love. I touched my chest and felt the emptiness inside. The silence was not only between us now, it was inside me. It was changing me. I feared that soon, even I would forget how to speak. Before I continue my story, please subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. The days grew longer. The silence grew stronger. Every evening felt the same. I cooked. He ate. He stayed with his phone. I stayed with my thoughts. One night I placed a plate in front of him. I waited for him to say something. He only said, "Thank you." His eyes stayed on the food, not on me. I sat across from him and watched. He ate fast. Then he stood and left the table. I was still eating, but he did not wait for me. I carried the plates to the sink. My hands worked with the dishes, but my mind felt empty. Was this still love? Or was it only two people living in one house? On weekends, he sometimes went out. He said he had things to do. I asked if I could come. He said, "No, it is nothing." He walked out the door, leaving me behind. I sat by the window and watched people walking outside together. Some couples laughed. Some held hands. My own hand felt cold. At night, I lay in bed. My body was near his, but my heart was far. I waited for him to touch me, to say something soft. But he turned his back, closed his eyes, and went to sleep. I turned too, my eyes wide open. I listened to the quiet. One morning I made coffee for him. I placed the cup near his hand. He said nothing. He drank it quickly, left the cup, and walked out the door. I looked at the empty cup. The silence sat with me again. At work, people asked, "How are you, Clara?" I smiled and said, "I am fine." But my smile was not real. No one knew the truth. No one saw the silence I carried home each night. One evening I tried again. I said, "Daniel, can we talk?" He looked up. For a second I thought he would open, but he said, "I am busy." He turned back to his phone. My voice stopped in my throat. I went to the bathroom. I looked at my face in the mirror. My eyes were tired. My lips were dry. I touched my cheek and asked myself, who am I now? I was not the girl I used to be. I was not the woman I wanted to be. I started to speak less too. I stopped asking him questions. I stopped trying to make him laugh. I sat in silence, just like him. It felt easier, but it also felt like dying. One night I saw him sitting on the couch. His shoulders were bent. His face was serious. I wanted to sit beside him. I wanted to say, "Do you remember our first kiss? Do you remember our first night? Do you remember me?" But I stayed in my chair. The words stayed in my mouth. The house was quiet. The clock ticked. The television spoke, but not us. I realized silence was not only around us. It was between us like a wall I could not break. One Sunday he went out again. I stayed home alone. The house was too quiet. I walked from room to room. Each room was filled with memories. The table where we once laughed. The bed where we once whispered. The kitchen where we once cooked together. Now, each place was empty. I sat on the floor of the bedroom. My eyes filled with tears. I wanted him to see me, to hold me, to say one simple word, "I love you." But no word came, only the sound of my tears. Later that night he came home. I wiped my face quickly. I smiled like nothing was wrong. He asked nothing. He saw nothing. He walked past me as if I were air. I thought maybe he was unhappy with me. Maybe I was not enough. Maybe he wanted another life. But he never said. His lips were locked. His heart was locked too. One day my friend Sarah asked me to join her for lunch. I went. We sat in a small cafe. She asked, "Clara, are you happy?" My spoon shook in my hand. I wanted to tell her the truth. I wanted to say, I live with silence every day. But instead I said, I am fine. She looked at me with soft eyes. She knew I was not fine, but she did not push me. That night, when I lay in bed, I thought about Sarah's question. Was I happy? No, I was not. I was lonely. I was unseen. I was unheard. My heart screamed, but no one listened. One evening the power went out. The house was dark. I lit a candle. The room glowed soft. Daniel sat on the couch with me. For a moment I felt hope. Maybe in the dark, without phone, without television, we would talk. But he stayed quiet. He looked at the candle flame. His face was calm, but far. My hope died. The silence felt heavier than ever. I could not carry it anymore. My chest hurt. My head hurt. My soul hurt. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him. I wanted to shout, "Talk to me!" But I did not. I sat with the flame and my pain. The days after that were worse. I stopped waiting for him to speak. I stopped waiting for him to see me. I moved like a shadow through the house. I cooked. I cleaned. I slept. But I was not alive. One night I dreamed I was standing in a big room. Daniel was there. I called his name again and again. But he did not turn. He only stood far away, looking at nothing. When I woke, my pillow was wet with tears. I began to fear the silence would never end, that one day I would forget his voice, that one day I would forget my own voice too. The silence hurt more than anger. It hurt more than lies. It hurt more than anything. It was slow, but it was killing our love. And I was powerless to stop it. The silence lived with us like a third person. It sat between us at the table. It lay between us in bed. It followed us from room to room. Every day it grew taller, like a wall made of glass. We could see each other, but we could not touch. I woke up early each morning. I made breakfast. Daniel sat down and ate in silence. Sometimes he read the news on his phone. Sometimes he just stared at the table. I wanted to ask, "Are you happy with me?" But my lips stayed closed. One evening, I sat at the table waiting for him. The food was ready. My heart was ready too. When he came home, I said, "Can we eat together?" He said, "I am not hungry." He went straight to the couch. I sat at the table alone. I looked at the food, and it felt like I was looking at my own heart, cold and untouched. The days passed, but the silence stayed. I began to feel tired all the time. My body was heavy. My eyes were always wet. I laughed less. I smiled less. Even my voice sounded weak when I spoke to others. At work, Sarah asked me again, "Clara, are you sure you are fine?" I looked at her and wanted to cry, but I said, "Yes, I am fine." She looked at me with soft eyes, but she said nothing more. That night I lay in bed beside Daniel. He turned his back as always. I stared at the ceiling. My lips moved, but no sound came out. I wanted to say, "I miss you. I love you. Please speak to me." But the silence was stronger. One morning I stood in front of the mirror. I did not know the woman looking back at me. My eyes were dark. My skin was pale. My smile was gone. I whispered, "Who are you?" But even my own reflection gave me no answer. The silence was changing me. I was not the same Clara anymore. I was smaller. I was weaker. I was alone, even with someone beside me. Then one day something broke inside me. It was a Saturday. I cooked lunch and placed it on the table. Daniel came home and said, "I ate already." He walked away. I stood still, holding the plate in my hands. I felt my body shake. My chest burned. My eyes filled with tears. I put the plate down and followed him. He sat on the couch, looking at his phone. I stood in front of him. My voice shook, but I spoke. "Daniel, please talk to me. Do you see me? Do you love me?" He looked up, surprised. His eyes were cold. He said, "Clara, I am tired." That was all. Then he turned his eyes back to the phone. My knees felt weak. I sat on the floor. My tears fell fast. I said, "You do not hear me. You do not see me. You live with me, but I feel like I am alone." For the first time, Daniel put his phone down. He looked at me. His face was serious. He said, "What do you want me to say?" I stared at him, broken. I said, "I want you to say anything. I want you to look at me. I want to know I still matter to you." His lips moved, but then he stopped. No word came. He picked up his phone again. The silence returned. That night I could not sleep. I turned from side to side. I heard his breath beside me, but it gave me no peace. I thought about leaving. I thought about packing a bag and walking out. But where would I go? What would I say to others? I was ashamed of my empty marriage. Days turned into weeks. Nothing changed. The silence grew even stronger. I began to write small notes to myself, not to him, only for me. Notes like, "You must stay strong. You must remember who you are." I hid them in my drawer. They were my secret voice. One evening I sat outside the house. The air was cool. The sky was dark. I looked at the stars and asked myself, "Is this my life? Will it always be this way?" I wanted someone to answer me, but only the wind blew. Inside the house, Daniel sat as always, his eyes on the screen, his lips closed. His silence filled the room. I looked at him one last time. My heart broke again. The next morning I made a choice. I woke up early. I packed a small bag. I put in some clothes, my wallet, and the notes I wrote to myself. I looked around the room one last time. The bed, the table, the chair where I sat alone. The silence lived in every corner. Daniel Kamna was still asleep. I stood at the door and looked at him. For a moment I waited. I wanted him to wake up and call my name. I wanted him to stop me. But he slept. He did not move. I walked out the door. My feet were heavy, but they moved. The air outside felt new. The silence was still with me, but it was different. It was not his silence. It was mine now. I went to Sarah's house. She opened the door and saw my face. She pulled me inside and held me. I cried in her arms. I said I could not live like that anymore. She whispered, "You are safe now." For the first time in months, I felt heard. My tears fell, but they were not only from pain, they were also from release. I stayed with Sarah for a few days. She gave me her room. She cooked for me. She spoke to me. She listened to me. I remembered what it felt like to be seen, to be cared for. Daniel did not call. He did not send a message. Days passed, and there was nothing from him. The silence between us had grown so strong that it now reached across distance, too. At first, I felt broken. I thought, maybe he does not care at all. Maybe I was nothing to him. But slowly, with Sarah's help, I began to see the truth. The silence was not my fault. The silence was his choice, too. I started to take walks in the park. I breathed the fresh air. I watched children play. I listened to birds sing. Their sounds reminded me that the world still had voices, even if my marriage had none. I sat on a bench one afternoon and thought about my life. I asked myself, Clara, do you want to return to that house? Do you want to live in silence forever? My heart gave me the answer, no. I wanted more. I wanted life. I wanted words. I wanted love that spoke. That evening I told Sarah, I will not go back. She held my hand and said, "You are brave." Weeks turned into months. I found a small place to live. It was not big, but it was mine. The walls were empty, but they did not feel heavy. They did not carry silence like before. They waited for my voice. Sometimes I sat alone at the table and ate, but it was different now. I was not waiting for someone who would not speak. I was feeding myself with peace. One day Daniel sent a short message. He wrote, "Are you coming back?" My hand shook as I read it. I thought for a long time. Then I wrote back, "No. I cannot live in silence anymore." He never replied. That was the end. A silence again. But this time, I chose it. It was not a silence that killed me. It was a silence that freed me. Now, when I wake up, I look at the sun through my window. I make my own coffee. I play soft music. The house is quiet, but it is not empty. It holds my voice, my steps, my life. I learned something important. Silence can destroy love when it grows between two people. But silence can also heal when it belongs to one heart. I chose the second silence, and in it, I found myself again. We all go through hard times, but stories like this can help us feel seen. Thank you for watching, and come back for more real moments.